was unquestionably the elegant capital of the East, the jewel among England's overseas trading stations. For if today Calcutta is famous for its poor, less than a century ago it was famous for its rich. As well as the British, Bengali dynasties also flourished. The Malik family, for example, still have Baroque palaces scattered around the city. Today in the West, Calcutta is a byword for poverty, disease, and urban decay. The fact that it was once the city of palaces, the St. Petersburg of the East, is now long forgotten. Yet even today, you only have to walk a short distance off the main streets to see that this was once a very rich city indeed. Today, these forgotten palaces are like the skeletons of old galleons, containing everything that's been salvaged from the wreck of Calcutta's Golden Age. The Palace of the Deb family was once the most sumptuous of all, a gilded fusion of all that was best in Mughal and Georgian architecture. In their palace, they entertained Clive and Warren Hastings with troops of dancing girls imported from Burma and the finest Bengali musicians. But today, the palace is in ruins, and the family squats in the one remaining courtyard, still roofed against the monsoon rains. Soon, nothing will be left. In the 18th century, even the austere Writers' Building was famous for its frenzied debauchery. It was the most wicked place in the universe, according to Clive, rapacious and luxurious beyond conception. Here, great wealth could be accumulated in a matter of months, but it could also be lost in minutes at a wager or at the whist table. As you wander through the rundown corridors of the building today, it's difficult to imagine the costly champagne suppers for which the Writers' Building was famous, or to credit the remark that long did the old walls echo to the loud rehearsing of tally-hoes. As can be imagined with a building containing 200 overpaid bachelors, the city traders of their day, these parties could be pretty inelegant affairs. One observer complained of the writers' barbarous custom of pelleting their dining companions with little balls of bread. But for the industrious, Calcutta could be a gold mine. This was once the home of one such writer, Richard Rupee Johnson. It is now the Tollygunge Club, where Bob Wright was the manager for 20 years. Bob.
Oh, my dear Willie. Very good to see you.
It's bloody hot outside. Absolutely.
I don't know. Well, I've just made myself a really good pink gin. What can I do for you?
Well, if you insist, glass of beer.
Glass of beer? Glass of beer. This WO building was built by a Scots family, the Johnsons. They came here in 1781, and they had a large area of indigo, reported to be about 400 acres. But in addition to indigo planting, he was quite a renowned local figure. I think they were soldiers or mercenaries of fortune. Even chaps like Clive and Hastings and so forth, they came out here with the knowledge that they'd make a career for themselves, but they'd also make a fortune for themselves. And I don't think they thought there was anything wrong whatsoever in piling it away and taking chests full of goodies back with them on their retirement to Britain. I don't think they thought there was anything whatsoever wrong with that.
Do you think there's anything wrong with that?
I suppose one should say yes. But in fact, if one realized that one was one of the lucky ones who had survived through it all, and you worked jolly hard, and nobody can deny that the Hastings and the Clives of this world did a lot of good, left a lot of good behind them, and took a lot of goodies with them.
There seems to have been a measure of desperation in all this frenzied dissolution. Few of the young writers lasted long in the malarial climate of Bengal. 1 year, over a third died between August and the end of December. In her diary for 1826, Lady West wrote, "Here people die one day and are buried the next. Their furniture is sold the third, and they are forgotten the fourth. O Lord, preserve my husband and me." Lady West and her husband both died the following monsoon. In this annual carnage, the teenage writers were particularly vulnerable. The average age for the death of a European was 30, and only 1 in 70 of the young writers made it back to Britain alive. Generations of my family came out to Bengal as writers, and several left their bones in this churchyard. Stair Dalrymple was typical. He came out to be a writer at the age of 18, certain he could make a fortune which will enable me to live as a gentleman. But when a ship carrying his cargo sank off Madras, he landed heavily in debt and wrote to his brother saying he'd been building castles in the air. 3 years after arriving in Calcutta, Stair was dead, suffocated along with 123 others in the infamous Black Hole. From that episode onwards, Calcutta has had a dark reputation. Kipling called it the city of dreadful night. Yet it is still surprisingly hard to escape echoes of the city's former glory. This rickshaw puller is Prince Dilawar Shah, whose direct ancestor, Tipu Sultan, nearly succeeded in expelling the British from India. The East India Company exiled Tipu's children to Calcutta. It took me a whole day of searching to finally locate their descendants in the slums of the south of the city. Prince Dilawar Shah? Prince Dilawar Shah?
कौन है? Yes.
आदाब। आप टिपू सुल्तान की परिवार से हैं?
Yes.
ठीक?
बैठे।
Thank you. शुक्रिया।
टिपू सुल्तान का बड़े लड़का से।
बहुत गर्मी है।
हाँ, बहुत गर्मी है। सही में।
कितने बच्चे हैं?
ये हमारा 3 बच्चे हैं।
3?
3 बच्चे और मेरे बड़े भाई को 5 बच्चे हैं।
8 बच्चे।
8 बच्चे।
सब। आप क्या काम करते हैं?
हम अभी रिक्शा चला रहे हैं।
ठीक? आप कितने पैसे एक महीना?
रोज का 50-60 रुपया कमाई है। इसी में 3 तो बच्चा है, अपना परिवार है।
अब आपके परिवार की दौलत को क्या हुआ?
सब बेकार हो गया। अभी हम लोग का हालत बहुत खराब है।
बहुत अफसोस।
लड़का वाला को पढ़ाने नहीं सक रहे। सरकार भी बैकिंग नहीं दे रहा, हम लोग का कमेटी भी नहीं बैकिंग दे रहा हमको।
आप अंग्रेज को जिम्मेदार ठहराते हो?
नहीं, हम अंग्रेज तो क्यों जिम्मेदार ठहराएंगे? अंग्रेज तो बहुत से हम लोग को फैसिलिटी करके गया ना, कमेटी बनवाया गया हम लोग का, सरकार से बहुत सा फैसिलिटी हम लोग सब बंद हो गया हम लोग।
As the British grew ever more powerful, annexing great chunks of India, the Writers' Building was remodeled to reflect its growing importance. The building's understated Georgian elegance gave way to a preposterously self-confident Victorian facade, as stodgy as a Mrs. Beeton suet pudding. Ironically, in 1975, the Writers' Building, once the seat of the world's most powerful capitalist corporation, became the office of the Chief Minister of the Marxist government of Bengal, Jyoti Basu. There could be no better symbol of how far independent India has reacted against its imperial past. Still operating from his office in Writers' Building at the grand old age of 84, Basu has outlasted or simply outlived all his rivals.
It has been our objecting for long years to get hold of this place so that when we become free, we can rule from here. And that is exactly, it was a long drawn out struggle, but then we became free. Now the character of this building has changed.
The Writers' Building itself became a nationalist target. 3 assassins became folk heroes, mythologized by a dismal Bengali stab at revolutionary cinema.
It happened on 8 December 1930. It was a thrilling episode of the revolutionary movement in India. At that time, this Writers' Building was an awe-inspiring building, and the myth was that it is invincible. So we decided to make a symbolic strike against this building. 3 revolutionaries, Binoy Bose, Dindinesh Gupta and Badal Bose, they stormed into the building. They first entered the room of Mr. Simpson, IG of prison. Then they went upstairs and hoisted the national flag.
Up here?
Up here. That was the first time the national flag was hoisted in Writers' Building. That was in 1930.
And it was very inspiring for the young men.
For the young men, it was a very inspiring episode. The invincible citadel of British power has been conquered symbolically.
Vande Mataram! Vande Mataram! Who are you? Speak up, you bastard! Who are you? Who are you?
My boss, please don't disturb me.
Well, it created a stir. I was studying in the school at that time, Senior Cambridge, so we were really thrilled. We couldn't really believe that some Bengali boys could do this. You know, we had a paper, the newspaper, daily, called Amrita Bazar Patrika. Now, in that, the banner headline was, "Dauntless Dinesh dies at dawn," because he mounted a gallows at that time.
Did you hate the British, or did you
Definitely.
respect them, or
No.
absolutely hated them?
Hated the British. And we are taught, unless you have your hatred for your enemy, you cannot be, you cannot go all out against your enemy. You must have hatred. Not like Gandhiji. My enemy, I love my enemy, but I want him to go. I will give him a mild push. If he goes, well and good, or if he doesn't go.
But Gandhi did get rid of the British.
Huh?
Gandhi did get rid of the British by non-violence.
How can we? Gandhiji's philosophy was that by suffering, we will change the mind of the British.
It's true, it worked.
Not at all. Do you think the British left because they have a change of heart? They felt, nah, we have done injustice to the Indians, so...
I think they did.
No, they did not.
In the years after independence, the army of bureaucrats at Writers grew steadily, as did the baggage train of services required to look after them. There are now an astonishing 7,000 clerks at work in Writers, and a whole township exists just to cater for them. Lucrative corners of the corridors and courtyards are looked on as prime real estate and are jealously guarded by their occupants. Most of the pan sellers and chai wallahs who now fill the corridors have been there for decades. The Writers' Building were originally the base for the European invasion of India. India has since mounted a counter-invasion of the Writers' Building. The life of the Calcutta streets has crept in here, and cobblers and hawkers, fortune tellers, astrologers, they've all set up shop in the offices and corridors, in the shade of the colonnades, and in the nooks and crannies at the rear of the building. Some have now been here for generations.
দাদা চটিটা সারাবেন, চটি সারাবেন, ও তো বলে দিল সারাতে।
चालीस बरस से कम है। मामा हमको दिए हैं बैठने को, बोला हमारा भगना है वो बुढ़ा हो गया, वो हमको दे दिया, क्या करेगा, आँख तो खराब हो गया तो आप कहाँ जाएगा।
Years after the demise of the Raj, the political climate has changed again. Once the government of Jyoti Basu enjoyed the support of the world's socialist bloc, but then the Berlin Wall came down, communist regimes collapsed, and the West Bengal government was left isolated and bankrupt. So against all their most closely cherished beliefs, the Bengali Politburo was forced to travel abroad, begging for foreign investment from exactly the kind of multinationals they had spent the 60s hounding out of Bengal. But Basu is not entirely disheartened.
We are convinced that capitalism cannot be the last word in civilization. But our marching forward, you see, the optimism that we had earlier, that has got a setback a little. But we think Marxism is a science, so there is a setback. There will again be an advance. People will understand through their experience that capitalism is not the way out, with all the unemployment, other social and cultural backwardness and difficulties which they have. That socialism can really solve the problem, but socialism also is changing.
As he patiently awaits the second coming of Karl Marx, Jyoti Basu is taking some steps of his own to adjust to the world he faces. He's trying to clean up the streets, even banish the hawkers and rickshaw pullers, in order to present Calcutta's more acceptable face to the world. The campaign is aimed at attracting back the Indian and international capitalists who have fled over the past 30 years. But 50 years after independence, the ghosts of the British writer bureaucrats have still not been finally exorcised from this building. Calcutta may never again be the city of palaces, but after 20 years of unbroken Marxist rule, it is beginning to feel newly confident and prosperous. Yet it'll take more than a change of policy to tame the lurking red tape monster inside Writers' Building. Whatever the future of this city, Bengali bureaucracy is likely to continue thriving as uncontrollably as ever.